One.
Hey everybody, it's Jeremy, and
Ryan.
we are the Capes Cast podcast.
Yes, sir.
Um, Today we're to talk about Flash. I'm just gonna get right into it. It's pretty dense. There's a lot of stuff that happened. Um, I'll do a little bit of refresher really quick before we get into it.
Yes.
Uh, Issue three, the last two issues, we broke a lot of ground in terms of like what this story is going to be building to.
Yes.
What some of these things or characters or events are in a way. Um, so Wally's been dealing with fluctuations in the Speed Force, and he's been kind of reality slipping, but he's not telling anyone.
Right.
And you have, the fallout from the previous run with him and having a baby, and the kids being more active in their role as heroes, and they're getting older now. And then just everything that's come along with that, with like their little like family trouble. Not like I wouldn't necessarily call it trouble, but like the things that every family, like every like your every like everyday regular family would go through essentially,
Right.
just compounded with the superhero aspect of it. Um and then you have Max and Bart, who have kind of gone off on their own, doing their own thing, and Max is also feeling these problems with the Speed Force. He's getting visions.
Right. When's the last time we saw Max Mercury, by the way? Because it's awesome that we're
Um
getting a Max like Max in here.
he We saw him at the beginning of issue 1. Before that, he was in one. I don't think he was in 1 Minute War.
No,
No,
I
he was.
don't really remember him being much. If he was in Adam's run,
He's
I don't
not in it
remember.
a lot. I don't think. I don't think he's in it for the most part. But then he was in Williamson's run at the end of that. But I mean, he's shown up a little bit, in the
Yeah, I'm
last
just
few.
glad he's like utilized here. Like I
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then what else? Oh, Barry is kind of like absent, but he showed up at the end of last issue.
right. He was at like the statue that I
Yeah.
think that this issue ends on. He was like there.
Yes. Yes, but he's not there now.
Right. Or
We
he's
don't
in
see him in
another
this.
plane of that. Like another like
So
basically where it showed Wally. We'll get
and
into
and
it.
and that and that's something that we'll get into too.
Yeah.
But I that and that's pretty much it for everybody. I mean, Michael Holt, Mr. Terrific, is still in the fray. He's helping Wally kind of learn what things are, and he's being the science guy for all
Yeah.
this.
He's being the Reed Richards as he should be.
Yes. Yeah. So and this issue kicks off with, I mean, pretty much Wally just saying, "Hey, man, it's spooky Speed Force stuff, right? Like that. We don't really
Right.
have to explain it much further than that." But Mr. Terrific says that is definitely not the case. This is something we need to study. And he's taken a very active role in studying the Speed Force since Infinite Frontier started,
Right.
like 2021, just because of like mainly primarily because of Barry and them working together, but also just because there's so much that's unknown about it, and there's so many layers to what this this like almost like supernatural force is.
Right.
um so like there it's funny because the dialogue between him and Mr. Terrific here, when he's trying to do his Batman voice,
Oh yeah, that was pretty
also
funny.
sounds like your Grodd voice, like your
Yeah.
Dr. Batman sound the same.
And I loved it too that before that happened, like we kind of get it, like we kind of get this clarification from Mr. Terrific that even Zatanna has like
Yeah,
looked at this.
yeah, because it's not
Even she
magical.
is like, I don't know. Like this is even above my pay grade.
Yeah,
So
which is like, it almost, how like in Marvel, like in when you get into like the higher cosmic concepts of things,
mhm.
they're they almost seem magical
Right.
because of how like like we can't comprehend them, and not and like and that really plays into the cosmic horror aspect of it. And like these old ancient cosmic forces or beings that are not meant to be understood, and if the human mind tries to, you go mad or things happen, like it's very much seemed to be playing up on that.
Right.
And it's cool because I don't think that there are a lot of things in DC that do that, you
No.
know, that at least that I can think of. So
Right.
it's cool to see that the Speed Force is kind of taking that role, because since its introduction, it's always been this enigma. You know, we don't know what it is, where it came from, what truly is the source of, like, other than Barry created it, but which if he did create it, and there's a lot more to it than that, it'll be really interesting to see what his role is in
Right.
terms of,
Because either they're
like,
gonna have to delve into Barry being a source, or they're gonna have to retcon something.
yeah,
So
exactly. So I mean, and it could turn out to be something along the lines of like the stillness, or whoever is the god of the Speed Force maybe decided that Barry should have been the Avatar. And
right,
I hate to throw that term around again because they used that in Williamson's run for the Forces. The
right. I
Avatar of the
mean,
Speed Force, the Avatar of the.
I have kind of like a little theory, but I'll kind of get into it whenever
Mhm.
we cross that path here.
Um. So after their little conversation, uh, Max shows up. You know,
Yay!
we love Max Mercury,
Yes, sir.
and he's kind of he's also trying to understand it, but he lets Wally in on it, like, hey, like, this is like, you're not the only one who's kind of dealing with this. You know, I'm kind of dealing with it myself.
Right. It seems like only Max and Barry are aware of it. It seems like none of the other speedsters are really too
Yeah,
aware.
yeah. So then they attempt to vibrate to another frequency, or what I at least think is another frequency, for them to be able to visit this other plane. You know?
Well, what I thought was basically Max Mercury basically just kind of just copied his vibrational function, so that made him kind of glitch too. Like,
That's what I mean. Like, yeah,
yeah,
he was just like, they were like syncing up with each other. Like,
right,
Wally was obviously doing the heavy lifting and getting them to that plane, but Max was just trying
exactly,
to match him so they could jump.
right,
Um, what I do think is very interesting is they don't leave where they're at, in terms, like, they don't get transported to another dimension, to another whatever. They're literally in the same spot, just on a different layer of reality.
right. Like
You can
Onion, they're
see,
kind of like at a different angle. That's what they say too. We're at
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
looking at a different angle.
and they say that a few times. They say that, like, we're looking at it from a different perspective, a different angle, a different, what have you.
Yeah,
And
it's
then,
almost like they're in the physical lifeblood of reality. Like it looks like
yeah, like, all of this, like, meat, like, tissue, and these, like,
right,
veins, it seems. But what I think is most interesting is when they hear, like, the pounding, like this, like somebody running,
right.
and then they come back, and then it's Bart.
Yeah, they see like the light and they're like, what the hell is that? They hear the running and then boom, they see Bart come in and it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
because, like, and because he's like, Max is like, we got to get out of here, and then they zip back to the regular plane of existence, and they end
right.
up seeing that it was Bart.
You're right. And Bart is like
So
wiser. He has no idea
yeah,
what.
so to, like, I'll go off on the tangent for this real quick. I Just based off this alone, it'll be interesting to see how their other abilities and powers affect these other layers,
Right.
because there could be a lot to this, man.
Oh,
Like, there,
definitely. Because I mean, we got like not only that, like the Speed Force is basically multiversal wide, and then you add these like onion layers to each. It's
yeah, yeah,
it gets overwhelmingly huge. So
yeah,
I'm pretty excited to see how Sai's going to tackle that.
yeah, exactly, yeah, me too. Because I feel so left in the dark, and I mean, we talked about it before. Like, there usually I don't really care to, like, for the mystery to go on for, like, too long,
Right.
but, like, I feel like the quality of the story that this mystery has, in terms of what the Speed Force is and how everything is, like, how everything ties together, I guess.
Right.
I'm okay with waiting it out and kind of, like, discovering it piece by piece, and even trying to figure it out myself. Like, this is one of those books where I don't feel like I'm being spoon fed, like,
No,
the
because we
answer.
don't know who the uncoiled is. We don't know what the
Yeah,
stillness is. We don't
right.
know.
And that's the other thing too, is, like, I mean, and I'll hold off on the uncooled stuff because they show up again. It shows up again in this issue, but
Right.
um, Bart is, like, chatting with them, and they say, okay, like, we got to go back in. You know, Wally and Max agree they need to go back in, and they they have to warn Bart, hey man, don't touch this thing. Like, you cannot touch it. Like, we don't
Right.
know what it is. Like, against your every impulse, do not touch it. You know.
Which, of course, if you know Bart, you tell him not to do
Yeah,
something. That's
he'll
immediate grounds for him to touch the wet paint. He's
yeah.
gonna do it.
But before they go back in, Bart makes a point and says that he stopped by and saw Iris. And then she said that Barry has been acting real gloomy.
Mm.
So we don't know why. We don't know if this stems from him,
Ooh.
or you know what I mean? Like he's really the only it's weird because he's the only one that feels this way out of the speedsters. And maybe this is just whereas Wally is phasing in and out of reality and Max is getting these visions, it almost fits in terms of who their characters are. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Like Max is the very spiritual, like aspect of the Flash family. He doesn't rely on science. He doesn't rely on like the proven knowledge. He just goes off like that feeling and that like um just like that spiritual feeling he gets from it.
Right.
And then, whereas Wally, it seems like he's like the perfect balance of it. Like he's the one that's dealing with the reality slipping, is having to face the problem head on because he's the fastest, but he's
He's the
also
chosen
like
one. He's the chosen one, basically.
essentially, yeah. So and maybe it's affecting Barry emotionally or in a lot
Yeah,
of ways
because I'm
because
wondering
he's the
if it's Barry's emotions that are affecting it, or if it's the Speed Force affecting his emotions. It's we don't know what.
exactly like and that goes back to my point where if this does have something to do with Barry, this kind of like further like lends itself to that.
Right.
So I don't know. It's interesting. I'm really interested. I it's so funny because I I don't talk shit about Barry. I mean I do sometimes, but like I think he is a cool character, but he has so much potential and nobody ever capitalizes on it.
Right.
It I'm interested to see what Barry's role is in all of this. Like I want to see more of him, even though like I don't want Wally to leave as the main Flash. I'm interested in what Barry has to say, has to feel about this. I just want to know his perspective because he is like created the Speed Force. You know, he was the first Flash that a lot of Flash fans know, and all these things. But like, I don't know. I'm interested to see what his role in is in all of it.
Yeah, because especially with Barry, there's so much that Barry has been through. It could be even a thing of, when I was lost in the Speed Force, I
Mhm.
ran into the stillness or I saw glimpses of them. It could be anything like that. Sai is literally pulling.
Yeah, a
Uh,
bunch of stuff.
yeah, and I think it's really cool. I praise it every time a writer does this with Flash. Keep Barry in it with Wally. We don't need to play keep away with the two. This
Yeah,
is I hate when they do that. Make this just a Flash book. Make it, everybody. Max, Bart,
yeah,
like it seems like Sai has a place for everybody in this, and that makes me
yeah.
excited as a Flash reader.
Yeah, I mean, and that just reflects on his ability as a writer, you know. Like if he can juggle all these things and all these plot lines, and make them all make sense and make them work to like work in the same direction,
Right.
then that just he's a really that makes him a great writer. Like you know, regardless of other books, you know, or like just this in general, I think this kind of proves that he's a pretty good writer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so then after that little tidbit from Bart, Max and Wally jump layers again. And what's interesting here is you kind of see these like skeletal like slash meat like different beings. Like you see like a a body with a bullet hole in it and a skeleton for a head. You see this like small little butterfly woman. You see like it looks like a almost like an orc or a troll
Yeah,
zombie or like a dragon in the background. And Max seems to think that this is the spirit realm.
right. Like a lingering spirit realm or something.
Yeah. He says
Yeah,
there's a lot of Wally, it's literally the plane of the lingering dead. It's all that is hidden in metaphysical. You've used super speed to access the spirit realm. And I think this is I have a feeling that every issue is going to have a connection to the previous one or to the next one because I feel like this discovery of their powers is in direct like only happens because of the conversation that Wally had with the stillness. And he
right.
discovered that he was able to stand still and he was able to literally like sidestep reality. So I feel like it's almost like one of those things like every time you use it, you're getting better or something new is happening with it.
Right.
and it's only because they're literally standing still, and they're able to shift the layer of reality they're on, or I don't know, man. I
Yeah,
feel like I could just theorize on what this book is going to be forever, for hours.
yeah,
There's just a lot.
yeah.
Um,
It's a slow rollout of everything. I feel
yeah,
like that's another thing too. Like it's for pacing. Cy Spurrier is doing this for pacing reason, and it's also like, let me give
yeah,
these high concept ideas to you slowly. Let me kind of just give it to you a little bit at a time, so it's not
yeah,
overwhelming. I think
yeah.
it's
So
great.
then, like, they get kind of jumped off panel, and it turns out that it is the gorilla that Wally had phased out of reality
Yeah,
last issue.
the body
Um,
horror in this part too is pretty
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, because he's been like shredded.
Yeah, he's like ripped up like paper, even to the point where his like word balloons
Yeah,
are.
exactly. And I said this, I think, after the first issue. I really do like. I feel like the letterers do not get
Oh,
enough credit,
oh yeah,
because they're like, just in this book alone, there are cool, like, the letters are cool, man.
yeah. There's a lot of like just capitalization, lowercase, and then you
Yeah,
go
and
like,
I like it when they use very, like, distinct, like, dialogue bubbles or like text, and that this is stuff that you used to not see in comics. It was just
right.
like all the dialogue was the same, you
Well, I
know.
feel like this also fits with the whole body horror. Like this is a
Yeah,
Mortal Flash. This is basically a
yeah,
Mortal
yeah,
Flash. So this
exactly.
kind
Yeah,
of feels like you're getting the body horror in this. You're getting the darkness of that. You're getting,
yeah.
it's
Uh, yeah. So Max was gonna, like, Wally was about to just say, "Hey, like, let's just give this guy that works." Like, it's not like we don't have time for this.
right,
And and I think Max even made a point earlier and basically said, like, this is something that we need to, like, figure out and, like, slow ourselves down and, like, see what it's all about. And then he even reiterates and says, "Wait, observe, understand."
right.
So, like, and then we kind of realize that um he's just confused. The ape, like, the gorilla, doesn't understand what's happening. He's like, "I was just fighting with you, and now I'm like shattered glass. Like, I don't understand." Like,
Yeah, he says it tore out my time.
yeah, yeah.
What?
And it's interesting and, like, that's, like, the way that is worded, because when they talk about the bubbles, like, they're in stasis outside of time, where, like, not like there's no passage of time.
Right.
So it
So
there's
like again, it just begs more questions. Does whatever the technology the gorillas were using, did this
Yeah, well, because and here's the thing, is it also has to connect to the technology that Mirror Master was using,
right.
which is also going to lead us into what is the next page, because we get a third voice off panel, and everything begins to fold into itself.
Right.
And Wally, like, he thinks he knows the voice, and then he, like, starts to threaten him. Max yet again says, "No, we wait. Like, we need to learn what's going on."
Right. And let me just say, this is such a callback to like those like weird 1950s comics where like everybody gets like flattened and spread to like, I thought that was really cool. It's like it's
Yeah,
so golden age looking almost.
yeah. And the next page is just them kind of, like, tumbling through each plane, each layer,
Right.
and the this mysterious figure is, like, kind of goading them on, taunting them, mocking them, like, "Oh, you got all these powers, and you really deserve them?" Like, you're just making them feel like shit about themselves, and, like, trying to, like, just, like, doing the classic villain, like, monologue of, "Well, you don't deserve to be the hero. You don't deserve to have these things. Like, you didn't listen to your friends and your family, so you're awful." Like,
Yeah. You don't understand what you're using. You're terrible at this.
yeah, and then he ends up trying to bring the smoke on Linda and the kids, you know,
Right.
and Wally's not really having that. It kind of gets him worked up, and so Wally falls for it, man. Hook, line, and sinker. They get zipped to another layer, and
Right.
this layer is the same layer that Wally first went into in the first issue, with the spiders and all the creepy stuff.
Hmm.
And then you see that the really, really old um speedster. I think it's from Adam's run, when he goes to the prehistoric time,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
like the one with the raptor.
Hmm.
And then he, like, so obviously there are connections, like, these characters are connected somehow,
Right.
whether it's, like, through the Speed Force or whatever. But they're all kind of like, we can't stick around, like we gotta go, like Wally West, we gotta bounce, because the Uncoiled shows up.
Right, and there's like 3 of them now, which
Yeah,
we
so
only saw
I
one before.
and I was under the impression that Uncoiled, like that boy, the blue streak or whatever his name was in the first issue, I was under the impression that that was like a unique case.
Right.
I didn't know. Obviously, I didn't know, but like it's cool to see that there are more of these out there. Like, and maybe these are speedsters that have kind of like succumbed to to I don't even know, like to whatever corruption is happening or whatever is causing these issues in the Speed Force.
Right.
Or also, it could be literally speedsters that are uncoiled from time. Like,
That makes sense.
so that being said, we go back to the gorilla. He says it tore out my time.
Right.
Do you think it's possible that whatever is controlled, like pulling the strings with Mirror Master and Folding Man and Grodd, is starting to take speedsters or other creatures that, and maybe the gorilla is just like one of those like oops, unfortunate casualties because Wally is now evolving and he did that sidestep and he's the reason that got sent, like the time torn out of him.
Right.
So like I have a million questions now
Right.
because if that's the case, that's cool because you're starting to see like a really, really slow rollout of like exposition and just expanding what like how everything works. Because we saw at the end of the 800 issue, at the story in 800, that Mirror Master was talking to something,
Right.
and we don't know what it is, and it's clearly not Grodd. And these uncoiled seem to be able, you can create them. So I wonder if it's this mysterious like thing or being that is like speedsters become uncoiled when their time is pulled out.
Right.
Like they still have that charge, that essence, that like that literal drive to run and catch things, but they don't have the humanity there. So it's just like the speed and whatever's left.
Right.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Like, I don't know. And again, this is all just like way left field, like tinfoil hat theory stuff. But
Right.
like, I don't know. And I like when comics do that for me.
I mean, we're
I,
only on the 3rd issue, and we have
yeah,
so many questions more than answers. So,
yeah. So then they start to like dip out of the uncoiled, like run away from the uncoiled. But then they start to realize that they're losing their speed.
right.
And in a last ditch effort to make sure Wally like keeps going, Max lends the rest of his speed and pushes him out of that layer,
Right.
getting left behind or dying. We don't know. I don't think that he is dead.
No.
There's no way. This has got to be one of those things where like if you aren't aware or if you're not thinking on it on like a super deep level, yeah, he probably could be dead.
Or maybe he could become uncoiled himself because they say right here that this place is outside of time.
Yeah, but
Like there's
see,
no time here.
I also don't think that Max is going to be the one that will become an uncoiled. If it's anybody, it's going to be Barry.
I can see that too, yeah.
Because I've said this a bunch. Like Barry's biggest flaw as a character is the fact that everybody writes him as like this gloomy, down in the dumps character, like guy.
Mhm.
He's the best pick. You know what I mean? Like, and the cool part is you're not sidelining Barry. You're giving him a different role, whether he becomes a villain like of his own accord, or if he's like influenced, or his time is sucked out of him, or whatever the case may be. I don't know. I don't think I've ever been more interested in Barry Allen as a character until this series, only because of all of the possibilities.
Right. Well, it would make sense too that after this, because obviously he needs to go back and find Max, that he'd probably go to Barry, being the source of the Speed Force, and be like, I can't, he's lost. He's lost.
We gotta find him.
Yeah, we got to find him. And only you and I
Yeah,
we're the most powerful speedsters. Only you and I can find him.
yeah. With as far as Max goes, if I have a feeling he's gonna find himself to safety somehow, but he's gonna use this opportunity to study and learn everything that he possibly can.
Right.
It I'm hopeful that Spurrier will give us like a very Max centric arc or a couple issues, or at least one issue of seeing him like really dive into like who Max is as a character and what his connection is to the Speed Force, and that's something I would really love to see.
Right.
Because I mean, we know because Max has jumped through time how many times, like
Right.
he was the whirlwind, like the whirlwind. He was Quicksilver. He's been all of these, like he's gone by these different names. He's gone by these different titles. He's lived through all these different lives.
Yeah.
And he's always tried to reach Speed Valhalla. Again, another character that has never slowed down since his time as the Flash or as a Flash. He's always been in motion. He's always been moving to try and get that next jump to Speed Valhalla and to try and get there
Hmm.
and to try and just learn as much as he can. But what
Right.
happens when that guy takes his own advice and waits and learns and stops and like really hones in that spiritual aspect a little bit more?
Right.
It'll be fingers crossed, man. If Sai could give me that, that would be a badass issue.
Yeah. I mean,
That'll,
especially
that'll,
you
that'll,
got Mr. Terrific helping on like the sciencey side, and then you
yeah.
got Max Mercury helping on the
Well,
spirit.
like, and the other thing I think about too is he's been doing so much with Nightcrawler at Marvel,
Right. Right.
like, and he just did that X-Men Blue Origins that from what I hear, practically fixed Nightcrawler's lineage and his parentage and all that.
Yeah, yeah, I heard about that. I'm not sure if people are excited or pretty cool with it, but
From what I've heard from a couple people at the shop and from what I've seen online, people are saying that this is kind of what Claremont wanted to do.
I mean, did you hear what it was or?
Yeah, basically he made it so that all three of the parents are Nightcrawler's parents.
Well, basically what I read was basically well, just we'll go back to it. But I mean, basically what I heard was Mystique turned herself into a dude and Destiny, and basically that's what happened.
Yeah, and then you have the whole like Azazel aspect and where he was like convinced that it was his son, just like he wouldn't end the world or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, how much better could you have done it, I guess?
Right.
Which I mean, and I've only heard praise for that, so far. So shoot, we only got 10 minutes left. We may not even get to Beast World.
I know,
That's
man.
fine. We'll just talk Flash. I'm not tripping,
Yeah.
But yeah, so to jump back into Flash, sorry for the tangent, but this is when he finally sees that it's the Folded Man that's been kind of pulling the strings all issue, messing with him, doing all this shit.
Yeah.
And he's still just goading him on, man. Like he's got beef with Wally hard.
Right.
And
when's the last time we've seen him?
I want to say New 52.
Yeah. It's been I haven't heard of this guy in so long.
I mean, he was like we know him from Dark Flash Saga because he was like the main guy, like one of the main guys on that. But then I'm pretty sure it was right after Future Flash.
Makes sense. Okay.
It had to have been right there, like around that, or like the Zoom arc, the Professor Zoom arc.
Gotcha.
It had to have been right around there. I don't really remember for sure, but yeah. So it's been a while since we've seen Edwin. So he's just salty, and he's like, hey, like. He's like, whatever, man, I'm tired of this shit. Like, I'm out of here. And so he just bounces. But we get a really interesting couple of pages that seem reflective of when he was in the stasis bubble.
Right.
So he enters this new a new layer, and there's a narration that's coming from him, but it's not him talking.
Right.
It's his thoughts. It says, at the end, at the lowest of all vibration of all, I come to a place beyond time, a place where thought and expression are one, a gallery of moments.
And it's really cool, the paneling here, because it's saying that this is just one moment, but you're seeing all these different panels, but it's all in one moment. Like all the panels are.
Yeah.
It's not, it's basically showing you that these panels are not in time.
I've noticed that this is probably going to be the standard panel layout for the most of the series, I would think.
Right.
But this book is just like just chopped up to a million bits. Every single panel is just.
Well, it makes you question everything you're looking at. You're constantly looking for the deeper layer of, like, literally the deeper layers of what you're seeing on page.
And I mean, and we can get to that because there's a few panels that even do that at the end of the second page in the gallery. Right. So he says, yeah, a gallery of moments where the bones of now feed the roots of perception.
Interesting.
And then it says, so still, so profoundly tranquil, I feel the tears rise in my eyes, but strange. Some of these faces feel familiar. The shoulders go back. The anxieties dissolve, no stress, no responsibility, just perfect porcelain peace. Before we go to the next part, this is very similar to when he was in the bubble in the
Mhm.
last issue.
Yeah, where he was just so comfortable and he
Yeah,
was
he was
lifted
just
up in
he had
space.
like he had no worries. No, like
Right.
everything, every burden, every like weight that he has been carrying is just lifted off of his shoulders.
It's
Like he
almost
doesn't
like
feel
his
like a big thing.
anxiety stops.
Yeah, like he's in like he's in like perfect zen.
Yeah.
And who's man, I'll jump right back to Max Mercury because he's been called the Zen Master of Speed. Like
Right.
there's so many fine little points that are being like connected, so many little things that are being pointed out, and this is fun, dude. I take back any bad stuff I said about this book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like prior to it coming out, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm still not the biggest fan of Deodato's art, but it's cool. It
I
fits
think
for the
it
story.
fits like the darker tone of a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff.
I also think that we wouldn't get this paneling if he wasn't doing the art.
Right. Right.
So
But some of
uh
the faces do look a little wonky at times.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I'm not this book isn't gonna change my mind on him as an artist, but I do think it's good. It's pretty good. It's not bad. So after that, we see a stick come in to the panel, and the panels begin to bend around it and kind of warp. And Wally's like, "Oh, what was that?" And then it's Bart Allen because he did the one thing they told him not to do, and he poked it. He poked the weird thing floating in the sky,
and it basically brought Barry or brought
and
Wally
it brought
back.
Wally back. And um, Matt, what? Bart asks him, where's Max, and that's
Right.
where the issue is. Really, and we've said this about every issue so far. Really, really packed, man. Really
Yeah.
dense. Really, really dense.
Right.
There's just a lot happening, a lot going on. It's so funny because like a lot of Adams stuff felt pretty quick to read, and that doesn't mean that's bad. It was excellent, but it was just high octane, fast action, fun all the time, and that's what I love about the Flash.
Right.
And like the wholesome aspect of it, the family aspect, like all of that stuff was very like 90s, early 2000s Flash before Barry came back. And and that's the Flash that I love the most. That's the Flash that I grew up reading. That's the Flash that that's the Wally that I know the most. So then that's just what I felt most comfortable reading about.
Yeah.
But when this came out and it was like kind of like a bigger meal, like I would sit and have to spend 20 minutes reading it sometimes,
Right.
and even going back trying to flip through it, and like even now, like flipping through it again, rereading the dialogue and talking about it right now, like
Right.
it's giving me so many other thoughts about it.
Right.
So
Even when this first arc is over, I'm gonna go back and read it all in full,
yeah,
so
yeah, and like I and I did another video no Thursday
right.
Thursday morning. I think you saw it with Drew Comic.
Mm-hmm.
We even talked about it. Like, I don't know. I don't usually reread books that are still still like out right now.
Right.
But I think this is going to be one that I'm going to have to because, I said there, like there's going to be a point in this story where I feel like something's going to happen, and it's going to change the context of a lot of stuff that's already happened in the book.
Right. Or there's
So
gonna be a tiny little detail that we missed that we're just
yeah,
in
yeah,
the background.
exactly.
And it's
Yeah,
gonna be
exactly.
brought up later, and we're gonna be like, oh crap, it really was in the
Yeah,
first issue.
yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm looking forward to is I keep finding myself saying like I used to hate being like in the dark for a long
Yeah.
time. But it's weird because I feel like I'm making so many exceptions for this book because it's the Flash, but it really is really good.
Yeah. And I
It's
think it's
great.
really cool too, because I watched an interview of Cy Spurrier, and basically he said that DC came to him and was like, do you have
Mhm.
any ideas? And he basically just said, I just kind of just made up this idea, and this is what came out. Like I just made it up on
Yeah.
the spot. And you wouldn't think that you would think that this is some, high concept thing that he would have post-it notes connected all over his
Yeah.
walls,
And you know what? And it's very possible that they came to him a while ago
Mhm.
and it gave him a lot of time to just like and I don't know his history with the Flash, and I would love to be able to ask him at some point, like, what's your history with the character? Like, have you always been a fan? Have you been a reader for a long time? Like, what runs have you read? Like, or in preparation for this, what kind of research and what kind of reading did you do?
Right. Well, we know that this guy loves like the spiritual and the
Oh,
magical.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He loves doing Nightcrawler. He loves doing like Constantine.
Yes.
I think he's basically just kind of doing that sciencey spin on Flash. Just
Yeah, it's cool because it almost kind of has that like Odin, like all force kind of like
yeah,
feel to that.
yeah,
In the way that it doesn't necessarily feel like completely magical. And this, and maybe not modern, but like 70s, like late 60s,
yeah.
like Odin kind of had that like cosmic sciency but still magic feel to it. And that's kind of what this vibe gives me is that.
Right. And I
And
mean,
I
not
think
even that.
that's cool.
We were talking about questions set up, but we don't even know what's going on with Jai still. That little
Yeah.
person. That like there's still so much that was set up in
Yeah.
the first issue with the kids.
Yeah,
That
like exactly. Like yeah, you literally have a lot of threads still going on. Like you have Barry and whatever's going on with him. You've got the kids, you've got Linda, you've got Mirror Master. You've got a handful of like
you got
plot threads.
Grodd, his goons. You got it's so
A lot,
many.
a lot, a lot, a lot.
So
But it's
cool.
cool, man. I think everybody should be reading Flash right now. It's both a not so good, but also a pretty good time to jump on because it's a new fresh take on the character, but it also has a lot of like old stuff littered throughout it.
And it's only on the third issue. It's better
Yep.
to jump into this dense kind of thing right now before you're 10 issues in and you're like, oh man, I feel too overwhelmed.
Yep. Agreed. Well, that's all the time we got for today, guys. Catch you later.
All right. Have a good one, guys. Thank you.